If you're not fired up after this weekend of NHL action, you best check your pulse. And that's why you're tapped into your daily source for fantasy hockey news. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And there is so much more to get to than just Auston Matthews. So let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome back inside the lab to your daily source for fantasy hockey news. It's a Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. On this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Shout out to the everydayers. Sincerely, much love for holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Oh my goodness me, Mr. Roden. This past weekend, there was a lot going on, and you and I do this in 30 minutes to make sure everyone out there gets what they need to know about their fantasy squad, bets, and news in 30 minutes. So we're going to have to pick and choose a little bit, but obviously, John Quick, we're going to talk about it. The best American goaltender to ever do it, and now he's got the wins to prove it. Auston Matthews, we're going to start there. Of course, there's a few angles, Steele, that I got to get off my chest. So I hope you're ready for today's episode.
Oh, I'm ready.
Big boy is coming in hot. And we're not even talking about that Art Ross race yet, which is even hotter. Waiver-Wire Targets, Monday's bets. It's a loaded Easter Monday. Happy Easter to everybody north and south of the border and around the world. Steele, right over to you, my friend. I think we need to talk about this Auston Matthews 60 piece.
100%.
Because look, I have a little list here that's what I was getting ready right before the show. And the other names on this list with multiple 60-goal seasons include Wayne Gretzky, Phil Esposito, Mario Lemieux, Brett Hull, Pavel Bure, Yari Curry, and it winds out at Mike Bossy and Steve Yzerman, and that's it. And now Auston Matthews. So I just got to come on here with you and talk a little bit about what you're seeing from Poppy right now, number one, and what you think of this 60-piece, number two.
It's absolutely sensational. And I'll leave the venting to you for your take about Auston Matthews, but I'll stick to the numbers here. Like you said, reaches 60 goals for the second time in his career. He's sixth all time in 60 goals all time in the NHL. This man has 31 shots on goal in the last 4 games. He has been gunning for that 60-goal title,
yes.
and he finally got it. I mean, it's just been incredible watching him play, and finally he gets that 60 number, so it takes a little bit of pressure off because the teammates, like I mentioned a few episodes ago, they've been trying to find him, which has been kind of a little sloppy at times, trying to get him to the 60 goals, but he finally gets it. He can calm down a little bit. And there's definitely still a possibility for 70 with 9 games remaining. I do want to say this,
not out of the realm of possibility.
It's not out of the realm, but I got to preface some of the games coming up because the next 2 games are against the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning. The last two games of the season are against the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning. So those games in between those back-to-back, Florida matchups at home and then on the road, you've got the Montreal Canadiens, the Pittsburgh Penguins, Detroit Red Wings, and twice against the New Jersey Devils. Those 5 games right there, he's got to be on the attack. Obviously, you want him on the attack against the Panthers and the Lightning, but still, those are the games where he can really get close to 70 goals. He's going to need at least 2 or 3 multi-goal games, which I don't think we've seen that much over the last couple of weeks, but he's going to need a couple of multi-goal games if he wants to get to 70. And he's pretty much he has to at least score at least 1 goal over the next 9.
And look, more importantly, clearly, you and I are excited. You're fired up for the number.
Oh, yeah.
It's special. But the Leafs still need to do what everyone out there is saying they need to do. And it's not like it's almost like people out there on Twitter are out there saying that we don't know the Toronto Maple Leafs haven't won and how long they haven't and what they haven't gone through. And I'll just say this, because this is the important takeaway here. 60 is a big number. It's only been done by the names that we just reamed off. And those are literally not just some of the best. They are the best players to ever play the game of hockey. So I'm not here for this slander towards Matthews. I saw a tweet out there, someone taking away tap in goals against bottom 5 teams and goals on the power play for Matthews. And if you add those up, apparently, he has around 20 goals or less. What do you think those elite players in the NHL were doing back in the day? Beating up on the bottom feeders, because that's what elite teams and elite players do. So I would also say this. Number one, Auston Matthews has rounded out his game to not only score goals.
Yeah.
He's one of the best two-way forwards in the NHL. So that's the most important thing here. He's not just scoring goals. He's getting it done at both ends of the ice and bringing it to this level. And number two, if he is on any other team than the Toronto Maple Leafs and he scores 60 goals in 2 out of 3 years, and look into the numbers, he's got a better goal per game average at this point in his career than Wayne Gretzky and Alex Ovechkin. If he's on any other team, Steele, he's getting all his flowers, but he's not. So you and I are going to give him some on today's episode, which is what we just did. Why don't you round out with whatever you think about my take there, and then we can head to John Quick, which is also very impressive.
Very impressive. But yeah, just to finish up with Auston Matthews, I mean, that's what we just saw the other day. With Andrew Berkshire on Twitter going after Zach Hyman's 50-goal season about the unethical and ethical goals that he scored, and the entire hockey community has come together. And I know it's a little bit different, but I hate that kind of takes too. It was a terrible take, and the entire hockey community on Twitter and just over social media in general came to defend pretty much Zach Hyman and berate Andrew Berkshire for the awful take that he was going after against Zach Hyman. So again, especially when it's any players revolving around the Maple Leafs, there's going to be haters out there. There are going to be some critics, and they're going to go after him and try to chip away.
And that's
anything.
just it, though, Steele.
Yeah,
it's haters. Right? They're being haters. They're being 60 haters. Goals. Come on, guys.
Yeah, 60 goals. They're being haters out there. We knew it was going to happen. And just to your point again about being one of the best two-way forwards in the game, he's definitely top 5, maybe even top 3. Should be at least top 5 in the Selke Trophy race, because he has been absolutely incredible on both ends of the ice.
I absolutely agree. And it's not just you and I on here who clearly have our allegiances. It's the NHL former players out there talking about how good Auston Matthews has been at either end. Hey, you want to go out there and say what you will about the Toronto Maple Leafs and their inability to win? It's not Auston Matthews' fault that they haven't been able to string together a good team in 40 years. The 70s and 80s, when Auston Matthews wasn't even alive, have nothing to do with this current group. So I'm tired of that narrative, Steele, and I'm also a bit tired of the narrative that he can't get it done in the clutch. And I'm going to leave it at this. In 50 career NHL postseason games, Poppy's got 45 points, including 5 on the power play, and I know he's got a couple of game winners. He has 6 game-winning goals, so he can get it done in the clutch, and I know that's the difference between establishing his career amongst the greats and not. We'll talk a lot more about it, though, down the stretch as we look at the postseason matchups previews. Everything's going to be covered on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Steele. Why don't we just shorten up everything else? Let's go to break right away. We'll talk about John Quick very short and sweetly after the break, along with the Art Ross Waiver Wire Monday's bets. Who, baby, here we go. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. It's well past the halfway point in the NHL season, and the NHL postseason is on our doorsteps. And regardless of where you're at in the NHL standings for your favorite club, you need to be playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and of course, especially daily fantasy hockey. Right now, you can use promo code Locked On NHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit that subscribe button. Are you watching on Fox Sports or on ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Day brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Continue to hit that subscribe. We appreciate all the love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Hit the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Sure. Over to Jonathan Quick, though, before we get to the art trophy race. between those three studs up there in the leaderboard right now. And we'll get to waiver wire targets and big time bets, of course. But Jonathan Quick becomes the all-time winningest American-born goalie in the NHL with his win, his 8-5 win over the Arizona Coyotes the other day, takes over Ryan Miller for the top spot. He has 392 wins now. He's 15th all-time in the NHL. And he's going to have another chance at winning the Stanley Cup with the New York Rangers this season and potentially next season as well.
There's something to be said about these records, Steele. And look, I'm not trying to take away from
a lot of records broken this year.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to take away from American-born players or anything like that. But, records that sometimes have to be set with a bit of a lens are kind of like, okay, what are we looking at? But for this one, Jonathan Quick is also a winner. Yeah. He has the numbers to make this a legitimate time for us to kind of reflect and look at this player. You and I were not playing fantasy hockey, for competitively like we are now when John Quick was winning Stanley Cups, when he was winning the Conn Smythe in 2011. I'd like to sit here and say I was playing competitively back then, but I really didn't start playing until like 2013, 14. So we really do need to just put this is two cup time winner, a Conn Smythe. And now he has this record. By the way, if you're passing Ryan Miller, we also just need to show a bit of love because lastly, he's also been relevant this year, Steele. And you have had to pay attention to him fantasy-wise. 17-5-2, 2 shutouts, and a .913 save percentage. You can't help but feel, though, the way the trajectory of this guy's career was headed. In those last, year and a half in LA, sure, 9-10 save percentage, okay. The team was a little bit uncertain of their future. It was almost like he needed to be pissed off and traded away from the team that shouldn't have done that to him for him to light a fire, go to Vegas, play really good, and go to New York this year and play even better. So it's really impressive, and we just got to give him his flowers, speaking of which.
Yeah, and on top of that, he got pissed for that happening, but he was even more pissed about where he originally was going to the Columbus Blue Jackets, then gets traded back to Vegas. About that. So good point. He was extra pissed off about that entire situation.
As I would be too. No one wants to hear that cannon.
It put the fuel under him, and he has been great. He's won a Stanley Cup since then. He's got, again, like I said, another chance with the New York Rangers when they head into the postseason this year and next year, as well as he signed that $1.25 million deal for another year with them. Let's get over to waiver wire targets. It's going to be at least either our last or second last time doing waiver wire targets. Unfortunately for me, I am out of the playoffs right now. It was a good run.
At least you made it, pal.
I lost 6-3 against the Dirty Danglers, Shahan out there. Congratulations to you. So it was a tough matchup. Very good on his part, but hey, my goalies let me down, which I've been talking about all season long. So it was bound to happen, but hey, fair and square loss. But let's get over to waiver targets. Let's try to help out those players in our listener leagues and all of your other fantasy hockey leagues out there with some waiver wire targets. Before the regular season ends. My first player, we've talked about him. You've talked about him over the last couple of episodes.
We got
Josh Doan of the Arizona Coyotes. I think we have to mention him. We might have to mention him again. I'm doing that on purpose right here. He's 2% rostered. He's 100% out there in your fantasy leagues. He's played 3 games in the NHL. He's on a 3-game point streak right now. 2 goals, 5 points total, 12 shots, 1 hit, 2 blocks. 3 upcoming games this week for the Arizona Coyotes. A little bit of a tougher schedule, but it is what it is. Vancouver Canucks, Vegas Golden Knights, and the San Jose Sharks. So a good matchup against San Jose, but going to be 2 tough matchups against Vegas and Vancouver.
And this is just that point in the season, Steele. You're going to have to target some players to kind of put yourself ahead of the competition if that's what you're still in, right? Like, I'm not saying adding Doan right now is going to be the difference maker for you, but just because the schedule is tough, you might not have many other options. So if there are players who are performing, you got to get nitty gritty. And I've got a couple of good players here, Steele. I'm feeling this one. First of all, I'm confused. And this is some of the times when I look at these numbers in terms of ownership of players, and I don't get it. How is JJ Peterka only owned at 19% on ESPN and 32% on Yahoo? 60% on Fantrax, I feel, is right where I would have expected for a guy who has a good shot at 30 goals this season. He's 22 years old. Actually, and you know me with birthdays, he's not even, he's going to be 23 in like 8 months. So he's not even hitting his prime yet, and he's popping 30. You got to be paying attention to these situations. The Buffalo Sabres have been a yo-yo almost the entire season, and right now is no different. They started to look really good, and then they just get skunked by the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I know Samsonov was a big reason for that. Anyhow, this week, very big game. Well, maybe we'll talk about that later in the week. They got the Caps, Flyers, and Red Wings. That's a very advantageous schedule for the Buffalo Sabres, in my opinion. JJ Peterka, he is at the top of my target list because this kid, I'm telling you, Steele, he's going to be a perennial 25-plus goal scorer in this NHL for a long time coming.
Now everyone out there definitely has to go pick up JJ Peterka because we both have him on our waiver wire targets.
Boom!
26 goals, 46 points in 76 games, career high, only his second season in the NHL as well. 203 shots, 18 blocks, 23 hits, 26 penalty minutes, and a +10. Over his last 5 games, though, it's been special. 5 goals, 12 penalty minutes, 23 shots, and 6 hits. He's been absolutely feeling it with the Buffalo Sabres this season. And the Buffalo Sabres, again, with all of their young prospects, all of their young guys in their lineup right now, they need to be, even though the season hasn't worked out for them, they've got to be really ecstatic about what the future holds, getting Bowen Byram as well. So, again, Benson's been pretty good on the penalty kill. He's been great. All these other young guys that we've talked about. So definitely go out and get JJ Peterka for this upcoming week. One last player for myself. I've got Ryan Hartman from the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, you do.
7 points in his last 9 games, 32 penalty minutes, 30 shots, 9 hits, and 11 blocks in those last 9 games as well. So he's filling out all the peripheral categories that you need to win your fantasy hockey week. 4 games this upcoming week for the Minnesota Wild. There are a lot of teams out there that play 4 games this week, but I'm highlighting the Wild right now. Ottawa Senators, Colorado Avalanche, Winnipeg Jets, who have been sliding, and the Chicago Blackhawks. So I'm really liking all of these waiver wire targets.
I love that you're highlighting the Colorado Avalanche because let me just talk about Jonathan Drouin very quickly.
Yeah, have to.
Jonathan Drouin has been an enigma when it comes to what you can kind of count on from him in his NHL career. And look, I don't need to talk about that. All you need to talk about is he's playing with with Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon. So full stop right there. And he's putting up points. So you just mentioned that also the Avalanche have that beneficial schedule. Jackets, Wild, Oilers, and Stars. Bit of a mixed bag, but I'm still liking 3 out of those 4 for high scoring. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the Dallas Stars, but those other 3, why not? So Jonathan Drouin, that's number 1. I got 2 more players after him, by the way, so I'm going to ream these off super fast. ESPN, 12% for Drouin, 25 on Yahoo. He's out there. Fantrax, 56. Number 2, Andrei Kuzmenko. In his last 2 games, 4 points. And the main reason I'm looking at this is twofold. 1, he's looking much more confident. This is what he's lacked moving to, in his second year in Vancouver. He looked uncomfortable, and then moving to Calgary, he's been a bit up and down. 4 points in his last 2 games, Steele, and they have the Ducks, Jets, and Oilers. But I'm liking this for a 2-week ad because after that, to round out the year, Sharks, Ducks, Coyotes, Sharks again.
That's a good schedule.
And then the Canucks. So I'm just going to go out there and take a shot on Kuzmenko now and keep him for the rest of the year. And to round this out, your boy, Gustav Nyquist, maybe one of the sneakiest on the year. He's going to top 70. He's going to top 70 points this year, Steele. So I wanted to give you some love. In his last last 5 games, 4 goals, 4 assists. He is putting up numbers. He's also been doing that basically all year. And to wrap it up, the Nashville Predators, Blues, Islanders, Devils, last one, Bruins. Okay, that's a tough one. They got 4 games, just like the list you reamed off, and 3 of those opponents, very advantageous. Gustav Nyquist owned it about 50% or less in most formats. That's my last one, Steele. There are a lot of good options for you guys out there on the forward market at the very least.
Gustav Nyquist definitely has to be in consideration for comeback player of the year. When we come back after the break, we're going to have big time bets ready for you on the Monday schedule. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The sports calendar is absolutely loaded, and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on the action. Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on the tournament, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find all of our episodes. We're going to return that favor right now with big-time bets. Lots of games on the schedule for Monday.
Happy Easter, everybody.
Happy Easter, everybody. Throwing it over to you, Flip. What are you looking at first?
Hey, Big Uncle Flip, the Big Easter Bet Bunny, has got a couple of locks coming up tight, Steele, because, look, I had a big Saturday. Tap into my weekly Saturday article. You can check me out on Twitter for that. I went 5-1. I'm feeling, first of all, Steele, I don't even care. I am going to be hammering player props. I've repeated this.
Yeah.
Teams that are hot going up against teams that have nothing to play for, I'm just going to be taking their best players, and I'm going to be taking their player props. If I have to take some juice, sue me. Case in point, the Colorado Avalanche roll into Columbus.
Oh, I love where you're going.
But there's of course, the natural instincts. Colorado on the point, on the puck line, makes a lot of sense. Colorado on the money line, the over, I could see it. Just give me Cale Makar, anytime assist. He's going to have 2 or 3 points for sure. He had also come into last game, back-to-back games with no assists, and then he had 2. So I think you're probably going to get a pretty good odd for Cale Makar anytime assist. Also, he has 62 of them in 69 games. Something tells me the percentages on that means you're pretty safe betting on a Cale Makar anytime assist. That's my first pick of the night, Steele. What do you think about that?
Loving the game, loving the player prop. I'm going to a teammate of his, though, Nathan McKinnon, over 1.5 points in this matchup.
Why
they
not?
just played the Columbus Blue Jackets on the 22nd in a 6-1 win. Nathan McKinnon, 2 points. The game after that against Pittsburgh, 3 points. And then the game against the Nashville Predators just the other day, 4 points for Nathan McKinnon. Take the over 1.5 points.
That same game, Cale Makar, 1 goal, 1 assist. So giddy up, pal.
Giddy up. We're on it with the player prop, Colorado Avalanche. 2 more picks for myself. Rangers on the money line against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm keeping it simple. And then Islanders on the money line against the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers are sliding right now.
You're fading them.
I'm fading them. It's going to be very tricky for them to make this postseason. They hold on to that second wildcard spot. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10 games. The New York Islanders aren't any better. They're 2-7-1. These are 2 very bad teams right now fighting for a chance to get into the postseason. If they get in, they're most likely getting swept, but I'm going to take the Islanders on the money line.
I'm with you, and honestly, you just explaining this kind of anticipation, what we're waiting for to see who gets in and who doesn't. This is where I tend to really be. I'm not a very patient person, Steele, especially when it comes to waiting for these kinds of hockey angles to break down.
Yeah.
It is April Fool's Day. We're not going to tell any jokes or any fables other than I don't know what I'm going to do unless this playoff picture gets solidified soon. However, 2 more picks for you. Looking at the Florida Panthers going up against the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight, number 1, I just thought under. Whether it's Samsonov or Joseph Woll, both of them have been pretty solid. Sure, Woll lit in a couple of softies the other night, but they have both been very good over at least the last 4 or 5 games for both of them. So I immediately was thinking under, and then you look at the head-to-head, 9 of the last 10 games between these two have gone under the number. So hit me with the Leafs, Florida, under. This could be a first-round matchup. The goalies are cooking. Florida is one of the best defensive teams in the league. Paul Maurice is going to have that team humming, wanting to go into Toronto. Give me the under, and I'm going to finish with perhaps the biggest betting lock that's out there right now. And yeah, it's not Sidney Crosby, but it's the other player prop I've been going to, and it's Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned
100%.
Good teams going up against bad ones. The St. Louis Blues just blew their season and lost to the San Jose Sharks. They're cooked, and the Edmonton Oilers are cooking, including Connor McDavid. So Connor McDavid is also, we didn't even get to that Art Ross race, which is amazing. You and I can talk about that on tomorrow's episode. All that matters is McKinnon, Kucherov, and McDavid are going to go right down to the wire. He has 96 assists, and he has
close to 100.
He has 2 or more points steal in 5 straight games. It might be more. I'm just only seeing his last 5. Give me Connor McDavid over 1.5 anytime points. That's my lock of the night. And that should be basically a lock of the night for the rest of the season at this pace.
Absolutely loving the player props for Monday's episode, Big Time Betting Board. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Day, they're here for you 24/7, covering all the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So make sure you go over there, check it out, subscribe to the channel, and also check it out on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day out there. Happy Easter, everybody. Good luck with your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.